Brilliance Audio presents A Bittersweet Surprise by Cynthia Ellingsen, performed by Kate Rudd. Chapter 1. Summer sunlight illuminated the painting on the wall of the Starlight Cove sweetery, making it glow in the early afternoon. The girl with the butterscotch hair was the centerpiece of the candy shop and had been there for 27 years now, ever since I was 5 years old. It wasn't an important work by a famous artist or anything, just a friend of my father's, but it was important to me. The painting captured the exterior light of the Starlight Cove sweetery at Christmas, the white lights shining from the edges of the windows and the black painted sills dusted with winter snow. Inside, the shop's display cases gleamed with trays of chocolates and brightly colored candies. A little girl in a frilly dress sat at a table in the corner, beaming as she sipped on a hot chocolate. It was hard to believe that little girl was me. So much has changed, and yet so much has stayed the same. With a rueful grin, I stirred my hot cocoa. The hard dollop of chocolate on the wooden spoon melted into the cup of cream, releasing its rich aroma. The chocolate dream, as my father had named it, had been a staple of the sweetery ever since he'd opened the doors just over 30 years ago. It was served on a tray alongside a small plate of whipped cream and 3 shortbread biscuits. I drank it like coffee, the chocolate as warm and comforting as a hug. Today, that comfort evaporated like steam when my cell phone chimed with a text alert from my stepmother, Jillian. Emma, dinner at 6. Harbor Resort. Big news. So much for a relaxing night. Back when I was little, I'd loved everything about Jillian. I thought her job as a newscaster was so glamorous, and I adored her perfectly done hair, her makeup, and the outfits she wore on television. She was charming and funny, and I wanted to be just like her. That is, until my father died, and she dumped me on my grandmother to raise. The rejection had crushed me. Jillian was the only mother I'd ever had. The fact that she'd abandoned me at the time I'd needed her most was something I had never understood. Of course, she'd tried to spin it, telling everyone she'd wanted to give my grandmother purpose after the loss of her son. True or not, I'd never shaken the feeling that Jillian had wanted me to prove my value, and I'd fallen short. It was my issue, not hers, but that didn't make spending time with her any easier. It also didn't help that I'd now put myself in a position of servitude to her, working as her employee at the sweetery for the past few years. Maybe that was what the dinner meeting was about. Sales had been sky high, and, with the exception of the 2 o'clock lull, the sweetery was always busy. A few weeks ago, I'd asked her for a raise but had never gotten a real answer. Feeling hopeful, I texted her back. Good news? The response bubble popped up, and I held my breath. You'll be excited. See you then. Oh, it had to be about the raise. Thank goodness. The extra money would go a long way. My grandmother's assisted living insurance was slated to switch from full coverage to partial coverage at the end of the year. If I could make a little more each month and cut some corners elsewhere, I could use what I had in savings to make it work. Jillian certainly wasn't going to pick up the slack. She and my grandmother weren't close anymore, mainly because Jillian had pulled away from my grandmother too. After setting down my phone, I headed to the front window to see if foot traffic had increased. Starlight Cove was in the middle of a rare heat wave, so the tourists were hiding indoors. I didn't blame them. Our air conditioning was always on high to protect the chocolates, but today it was so hot and muggy that the room was barely cold. Outside, the pastel buildings on Main Street nearly looked white in the bright sunlight. Lake Michigan glimmered like a cool oasis behind the shops across the street, but the small sections of the beach I could see were empty, even by the lighthouse. My father had often said few places compared to Brugge, where he had apprenticed, but the sense of charm and community Starlight Cove offered gave that same vibe, of a place that people wanted to visit again and again. It was a fairy tale-like setting. There were thousands of pictures on social media of our storefronts, with the lighthouse somewhere in the background. I was about to turn away from the window when
Sample complete. Ready to continue?